we should be live.
And I should be in
Hello.
bed. And I should be warm in bed.
All right, guys. Well, let's get a sound check. So, obviously, I've talked. Let's get something from Steve and Big Pod and George.
Hello there.
All right.
Hello.
Hello,
everybody.
I'm climbing into bed. Give me a second.
Yeah, and for those that are watching on YouTube, let us know, can you hear all of us? Because my audio stream is different from everybody else's. I've talked. So I could just preview it really quickly here.
Hello there.
Yeah, it looks like our audio is working as expected.
Though you should say as unexpected, because usually they expect audio to go wrong.
Yeah. Although your guys' audio may be a little low. Let me adjust it. I think we should be good now.
You should have said as unexpected, because usually audio goes down on these streams.
You know what? Not lately. Oddly enough. For years, that was the case. Like every time we did this, it seemed like for, 5 years straight. Like every single one had an audio problem, or sometimes video, or sometimes both. But I can't. It's been months since we've had any real issues. So like now, it's very strange. It always just works.
Yeah, because you're paying out of pocket for Zoom.
Well, I mean, I was paying for Zoom back then. I mean, it was from the moment we started this channel.
Well,
you have to give Linux and stuff credit, though. When it goes
what
bad,
I was about to do.
It's spectacular.
Yeah, I was going to give Pipewire all the credit. I think that's what really has pushed this thing forward. Yeah,
Pipewire recently has had many updates almost every 2 weeks. An update.
Yeah, so it seemed like when I was scheduling this, obviously February is a little bit of a short month. I mean, I just talked to you guys a couple weeks ago.
I was surprised email came.
But you know what? We've got plenty to talk about, oddly enough, because there's been plenty of
subjects, plenty of things.
Yeah, there's a lot. Now, obviously, we can get into some of the drama, especially around the kernel. I guess we could knock that out right away. It's probably not a subject that most of us really care about, because most of us are not making any commits to the kernel, and we really don't care about the whole Rust versus C thing. At least I don't.
Well, I do on a philosophical level.
Of course.
And I can give feedback as a small business owner. Even the foundations and nonprofits are very different. But
sure,
yeah,
yes. my opinion is from a philosophy and really the good for Linux perspective that Linux should have as many bindings for as many system level languages as possible. Forget just Rust. Add Zeek. Add Carbon. Add C++.
Go.
Go has a garbage collector. Go isn't a system level language. I wouldn't add it there. But things like Zeek, things like Carbon, things like C++.
No, I want to be able to make a commit in JavaScript, Big Pie. That's ultimately where we need to go.
V8 engine should not have nothing to do in Linux. I'm saying things that would make logical sense for people to write drivers in, because at the end of the day, what's the catch? At the end of the day, the catch is that you want, whether it be people who contribute to kernel, to write modules, to want to write modules, and don't have to learn so many things, because they already have to learn mailing list. They already have to learn things like how Git for kernel works, which is far different than how we use Git today. So these whole things they have to learn. Now they have to also learn C or Rust. Why not use whatever language they are most familiar with? And on top of that, and I know people don't care about this like normally, but for people who use out of tree modules, who write out of tree modules, it is also just as important for them to be able to write in whatever easily write in whatever language they want. They can already write it, but they will be able to easily write in whatever language they want, and that's the point. And I hear out of criticisms about how people will not be able to develop or because they won't know what the C side is doing or what the
Right.
what the
I mean,
Rust side is
that's
doing.
criticism is now, you're going to have, especially some of the maintainers of the kernel, they're going to have to be at least reasonably comfortable in multiple languages. But
No,
honestly,
no.
I don't even think that's a big deal, because if you can learn C, I think you could probably get reasonably comfortable with Rust in
That's
a
also
few
true.
weeks. In a few
But
weeks.
that's actually not true. That's actually not necessary.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, for people who aren't in that specific space of working in the in-between, only they will have to care. Those people who will be writing Rust bindings, those people will
Right.
have to care about knowing
They
both
would
languages.
need to know both languages.
Nobody
obviously.
else will have to
Yeah.
know both languages, because those people who write core features in C or drivers in C, they don't have to care about what
You don't
Rust
think
side is
Linus
doing.
or Greg Crow or Hartman would need to know both? I'm sure they're probably familiar with both, though.
That's the part I was going to get to. People managing will have to know more. Yes, people who are management positions.
And I don't think that's a problem with Linus or Greg, because I'm sure they probably know both languages, or
Yes,
reasonably. Yeah.
Or they can they can hire people who can take on that load. But you don't need to understand the other language, because all you have to do is use the bindings in your language, or the shall we say header files or bindings, depending on which language you're using. But what needs to happen is things need to be written specifically. For example, I'm going to give a basic example. Core features, like in this case it was DMA, should all be written in one language. So because of consistency, let's put C. C is the central language in which core features are written in. Then other languages create bindings that are
Bindings around it, yeah. Exactly.
best, that will work best with the language that they're written in, and then all the drivers just use those bindings. So there is this wall between.
I mean, that's the way so many software projects work anyway. I mean,
yes,
so many things are written under the hood. It all is C, but on top of it, you're using Python bindings or whatever the hell
Look, remember this. Most of your games were written in either C# or C++ or Python, but mostly it's actually C# for most games, or maybe Java. But the engine that the language you're writing your game in is using is actually C, or in some cases even assembly. But because the developers made good, efficient, and logical bindings in the language that is above it, that you write your game in, it doesn't matter to you what language the core engine is written in. All that matters to you, what language you're using.
Yeah, and from a point of view of someone who has been watching all this happen, I see where Linus has a point. The whole hubbub is meaningless, because the Rust code, while the Rust code is present in the kernel, it's not touching. I forgot the name of the guy.
The person who was complaining about Rust
is Asahi Linux maintainer.
Yeah, Asahi
no, actually
guy,
no. Asahi guy was on side of Linux, on side of Rust. Asahi is written Rust. The person who was complaining about Rust code touching his stuff, which it actually isn't, is Christoph Helvig.
Yeah, Christoph Helvig.
The main, I believe, the main author of the DMA subsystem, which is one of those core features I was talking about.
The whole hubbub is meaningless because it's not touching his code. It's present in the kernel, but it's not touching his code. It's in a separate area of the kernel for people to use.
It's just a user. The Rust code is just a user of his code, like any other driver would be.
Yeah, exactly. So the hubbub is meaningless.
But he might be trying to get in front of things to say, hey, I'm putting up my boundaries right now. And I think it might partially be he's trying to prevent
a problem.
Prevent what? That at the end of the day, he cannot say what user will use his code. That's literally the point of
true.
it all. Like if a driver was written in Rust, he shouldn't be able to say you cannot use DMA code, you cannot use DMA as a subsystem of Linux kernel because you're writing in a language I don't agree with that should be in the kernel. That shouldn't be his decision.
Okay, well, yeah, if you put it that way.
That's the point, because the bindings are at the end of the day just a user of the subsystem. They're exactly the same as any other driver, except they make for people who write drivers in Rust a lot more sense, and idiomatically make things more efficient and better in the long term.
Yes, exactly. So
my thoughts about this, it's not really about the technical side of all of this. It's just in general, when these projects find it necessary to make a change, and any project that lasts as long as the Linux project, I mean, it's 3 decades old now.
To her sooner or later.
You're gonna have to sometimes break things, you know. Like
Yes.
it's a necessary part of software development that I think some people resist, you know. And like I think Linus is perfectly right. It's like, hey, this Rust thing, it has to be a part of the kernel. Yes, it's going to piss off some of the old Unix neckbeards. We know that because they only want to program in C. C is the ultimate language. Nothing else exists. Oh well,
Yeah,
those
but
guys will have to get over it.
I
And if
mean,
some
they
of them
also-
leave, that's fine, because the guys that leave are going to get replaced by these new Rust guys that hopefully will start, you know, being a
Well,
part of.
And they have to remember that Linux isn't Unix.
Yes.
Right.
Linux is Linux. And you know what's the most ironic part to me? That implementation of things that will be the management systems that will become, that are coming, that are need to come because of Rust involvement, will have a bad effect on Linux, even if in a year's time Linux decides, yeah, this, shall we say, Rust experiment didn't work, Rust needs to go out of kernel code. They will still make an extensive and impact for the good of the kernel.
Well,
which
I think
is
that's another thing.
always better.
I think Linus Torvalds knows that, you know, he's been maintaining the kernel for 30 years. He might be around another 10 years, but he's not going to keep going the rest of his life maintaining this. He wants to set it up to where it's in a better place when he decides to walk away. So I think that's part of why he's doing some of these changes now.
I mean, if you take the traditional retirement age, you know, he's
there.
less than 10 years. Well, he's less than 10 years from that. I mean, he's only 56 this year, maybe.
So he's 4 years away from what we Europeans would think of retirement age, around 60.
Okay, that's different. Okay, 60 versus in the US, it's 65. Yeah.
65 typically, but yeah, somewhere in your 60s.
60 to 65, it's standard.
But many people
age.
retire early. Many people work a job for 30 years, and if they've saved up in a 401k, they put in their 30 and then they're done. And in his case, he put in his 30 already.
Well, yeah, I mean, he probably gets enough compensation that he's definitely has his retirement covered.
He's set financially. He should be. Yeah.
And
he probably was before the 2000s started.
Yeah.
yeah, I would imagine. Yeah.
And on the front of technical reasons, the only technical reason I heard that I would even consider as a not a bad thing for Linux to consider is the compile time of the kernel. But that they just thinking about it makes me feel weird, because I know how most
Think of the
people,
Gentoo users, Big Pod. Think of the Gentoo users.
Yes, but they are irrelevant in this conversation. Sorry to say, but your number is so small and so specific, it doesn't matter, because the vast number of people who compile Linux kernel compile it on a server that is far away from them, that is just a job on a screen.
I would love to know the actual numbers of people that use desktop Linux that actually compile a kernel. And when I say compile a kernel,
You're talking to one.
Don't compile the generic kernel. I'm talking about go in and actually pick and choose your modules. That number has to be, I bet it's not even 1/10 of people that actually do
it.
I would bet that it's not 10 to 1%. And
I
did it in past because I needed a specific module enabled that wasn't enabled in any of the standard kernels that were shipped with distributions. Guess what?
I
also did it in a server in cloud, because why the hell would I let it be done on my end if I can pay Microsoft or Amazon a few cents to do it for me on a machine that is far more powerful than anything I do? And at the end of the day, all they will do is push the completed file, which would be a package for my package manager, onto a repository host, and all I'm gonna do is sudo apt upgrade or sudo dnf upgrade or whatever package manager was using at the time. I don't remember. That was the point, and that's still how most people who compile kernel, whether it be for themselves, whether it be for the company, because internal kernel, or whether it be for their device that they're shipping. They build on a random server, they package it up and then deploy it, and then they're done.
Yeah, well, there's the CachyOS developers who maintain their own proprietary kernel. They compile that, but again, on a server away from them, like you said. But for you, they like TKG, for example, they have a script that lets users pick and choose which modules they want to include in the kernel, and they allow the user to compile their own version of the kernel for their own machine. So some users do compile, like myself, do compile the kernel from time to time, but that's such a tedious task. But it doesn't take hours.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that people don't compile the kernel. We've all compiled the kernel. I was just wondering, like I bet the number
is so small,
crazy
it's
small,
irrelevant.
Right?
Yeah, it's very small. Saying. Yeah. No. People would rather install the precompiled kernel from any repository rather than compile it themselves. You are 100% correct on that one. But those people do exist, no matter how small the number is. But those people do exist, and I stopped doing it less than a year ago, because nowadays, if you have the chaotic AUR, you have access to most of the kernels. So there's no point anymore.
Yeah.
I think also I think there's a lot of problems in the way that the ecosystem of Linux has become, that I don't know that it can ever change to make substantial improvements, and they kind of just have to maintain the ecosystem that exists.
Also, yes, kernel needs a huge amount of improvements that are outside of just new drivers. Kernel needs to become more conducive to auto-trim modules, like loading them. They don't need to be built for this exact specific version of kernel, which is a giant problem in my opinion.
It's the fragmentation.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do updates right now on my production desktop, because for whatever reason the AMD GPU drivers don't play well with the 611 drivers yet, because they have to do an update.
I'm gonna say it simply. I have an NVIDIA card. I should be able to just go to NVIDIA website or to my package manager, whatever, it doesn't matter. Download the file or give it a command, install this version of the driver, and it will install just like it does on Windows. You don't have to speak, I have this specific build of Windows. Because it doesn't matter. You can pick a version of the NVIDIA driver from a year ago, and it will work if it's made for Windows 11 or Windows 10, because it's in reality the similar kernel.
Yeah,
and that's the point. We have to limit or have to remove this coupling between a version of the driver and the version of the kernel.
With DKMS, you can probably do that, but not a lot of this fragmentation that makes two versions of the drivers available, the non-DKMS and the DKMS. That's already confusing enough for users.
This needs to be native to the kernel.
Yeah,
strictly speaking, this needs to be native to the kernel.
Yeah, and for somebody who's technologically savvy, but I'm not a computer scientist, I'm not trained, I don't have a degree, I don't have a job in the IT industry, although I do actually do technology stuff for my company in my field. But for me, quite frankly, nuking and paving is really the only thing, because it's not worth my time to try to figure out why something broke.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, I am, all this stuff. Nuking and paving is the only viable option for me when it comes to time. Like, even if reality, if it takes more than 10 minutes for me to solve the issue, whether it be on Windows or Linux,
time limit.
Install
if I can identify the problem and I know I can fix the problem in 30 minutes or less, I'll fix the problem.
Exactly.
If it's going to take longer than 30 minutes, grab the ISO.
I agree.
Let's go.
Yep.
Same here. Same here. This time, I'm waiting for the 1 year to be done, because I've been running Zero Linux on my main machine for 325 days now. I'm still waiting till I reach 365, but then I need to nuke and pave, because as a distro maintainer, I mess a lot with my system. Because right now, as things stand, I upgraded to a 5950X, which is a 16-core, 32-thread CPU, but I can't benefit from it because my system is so messed up.
Yeah, that's like people often, they'll ask me, what distro I'm running. And of course, this thing started life when I installed it as Arco Linux. But I've enabled and disabled so many repositories and grabbed software from so many different places over the years.
Yep.
This is in no way Arco Linux the way it was intended. So
at
some point, I might want to nuke and pave and start, fresh again, because hell, I've got so many programs installed that I don't even use just from testing software. I've got so much just cruft laying around on the file system. Sometimes it's just good to clean it all out with a fresh install.
This is something, and that hits. That reminds me of what's happening right now with Flathub, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But what I want to say is, there's a tool for Flatpaks called Warehouse that allows you to clean up after uninstalling a package. But for native packages, there is no such tool. If you uninstall a native package, you're multiple native packages, and you no longer you uninstall it, but you're going to be left with all the cruft and all the. Sometimes services don't get disabled. You don't know about that, and all these
they
things
leave
remain on your
configurations hanging
there
out
are
in /etc.
side effects that are left behind. Yes.
Yeah. So the native the Flatpaks have solved that issue, but the native packages have yet to figure out a way to figure it out.
Well, with the native pack, like if I install a program and then I configure it, and then later uninstall it, I can understand why the config file would be left on my system, because what if I reinstall it later and I want to use the same configs that I
disagree.
can understand why some...
I disagree. That shouldn't be left there.
Many programs do. They'll leave stuff hanging out in /etc.
Problem is that simple reality is that you have to actually be able to know as a package that this stuff will be left there. That program... Of course, program won't know how to clean up after itself, because they won't even know
some of them leave stuff in user lib. Some of them will leave. I mean, they leave crap all over the file system.
That's a badly written package. I'm sorry, I'm gonna say that's badly written package, because that's why it has a removal segment.
Yeah, but we can't make every developer build packages the same way. I mean, we can have standards, but we know nobody follows standards.
And that's the side effect of the fact that developers don't make their own packages. That random people who may not even know the program very well do that. That's the side effect.
Well, if it was only developers building packages for us, we'd have very little software in the repos.
Well. Yeah, that's why there should be only one repository that we should care about, Flatpak, and that because everything else should because everything should be handled by a.
But
by
you
a
still
single
need the
package
developers
manager.
to build the Flatpak. I mean, and
Yes,
most
that's
that's
the
community as well, Big Bud. You're
yes.
still going to run into the same problem.
And here's the catch. Most people would be willing to write packages if it was easy. Which with most traditional package managers, it is not. If it was, well,
you don't think creating a Debian package is easy, or a RPM,
creating a Debian package is an absolute fucking nightmare. I did it for a while. I know what I'm talking about. Creating an RPM is not an absolute fucking nightmare. It's just a nightmare. Creating an Arch package is fairly nice.
Mm-hmm.
Creating a Gen 2 e-build is fairly
that's not
okay.
Bad. Yeah, Arch packages are not bad. Actually, with containerized stuff, app images are actually pretty easy to create. Like, none of these package formats, that it's not difficulty that's preventing developers from doing it. I think it's just time.
But that's exactly what I'm trying to say. I mentioned 4 different traditional package managers, and with that I covered most of all the distros. But guess what? We're talking about 4 completely different formats that have completely different syntaxes, completely different in.
You're always going to have different package formats, Big Pot. That's why it has to be the community building the packages and not the devs.
No.
That's why it has to happen that way.
No, that's why Flatpak exists. So you have one format that works everywhere. But you're not going to get
everybody to use Flatpak. This is free and open source software. That's like saying everybody should use System D. You're not. We've tried that. There's plenty of people that will never use System D.
What I'm trying to say is that's their problem. People who want to be out of the norm are on their own. People who want to use, because that's the reality. 90% of all people don't want to be out of the norm because they want to use a computer. Look, reality is, I'm gonna ask a question, and how many people do you think install programs via APKs on Android?
Ooh.
Yeah, well, let me further prove his point that I recently converted 2 of my best friends to Linux, and I showed them how to install packages via the terminal, native packages via the terminal, and I showed them Flatpaks. They chose Flatpaks immediately. Why? Because it's a clickable button. It's simple to manage. They uninstall. They told me they asked me this question: if I uninstall the package, will I be left with the cruft behind it? I told them not if you use the tool I included, because they're both using Zero Linux, of course. Not if you use the included warehouse. So I showed them how to remove all the cruft. They were like, "Thank you. This is what we're going to use." So I showed them how to install Flatpaks via the terminal. But actually, what they loved about Flatpaks is that they can visually check every package on the Flathub, and the fact that the dependencies are containerized with everything. So they were like, "Yeah, thank you. This is all we're going to use," and they've been using Linux for the past 3 months without even asking me for support, not even once. So Big Pod is right. Flatpak is amazing, and everybody should use Flatpaks.
My point's not that Flatpak's not amazing. I think you guys are missing the point. I use Flatpaks. I know they're amazing.
Yeah,
yes, they should be default option.
You're never going to have people adopt one option.
People will make packages, but those should be, I hate to say this word, irrelevant to the conversation, because they'll be the smallest amount. Now I'm gonna say this way.
This is a fantasy land, Big Pod, because until distros adopt Flatpak as the standard, right now it's not the standard anywhere. I mean,
reality is people would start packaging things, Flatpak would be very quickly developed.
Debian's never going to adopt Flatpak.
Oh, they would because they want the best user experience, or they want to be out of norm.
Not that group, Big Pod. The Debian community is a little different.
I'm gonna give you like an example.
You stand a better chance of getting Arch to adopt Flatpak.
For me, Flatpaks have made Linux fun again in a way because it's easy for me to go to a folder to see what's installed. I don't have to go to the command line if I don't need to.
No, sure.
And updating them is great. I mean, there's a reason why, app images and Flatpaks can be like super, less snaps, because I see snaps as being more of a server thing. But I know there's arguments for it in different ways. But I mean, there's a reason why the Macintosh ecosystem and the way it handles apps works very well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's something that, I mean, yeah, there's issues and there's considerations there, but I think for managing easy, just working, I think it goes a long way.
Yeah, I think what you're likely to have though is like some of these distros may want to adopt like containerized packages, but instead of adopting one of the formats that are already out there, they'll create their own.
Okay, that's their problem. That's their problem. That's not the problem of us or the application maintainers. That's the problem of the distro, and they should be just direct to that distro, and that's it. The catch is I'm going to talk about now about my experience with people outside of Linux space. I know a lot of programmers who want to deploy to Linux. First thing they ask me, or if I recommend them, why don't you do a Linux build? Why don't you have a Linux version? All of them say to me few questions, but the one I remember most of all is, but what Linux?
Yeah,
what environment to deploy to?
Which of the 300 distros should I?
And I will say there is only one environment on Linux that you should care about. It's called Flatpak for your desktop applications and Docker for your server applications. Nothing else. Because those two are formats that are universal, that you can reach most people with.
You just made Stefan laugh when you said Docker.
Well, Docker is great for certain applications, but I surely don't see why you should put like a Postgres database in a Docker container, virtualize it.
Hey, Stefan, your volume's a little low.
Stefan.
Yeah.
For the same reason, you should probably put your database into a VM. Anyway.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, your database should be exactly like your application. Should be ephemeral. You should have storage somewhere else that is completely separate from the actual program running, which means you should treat it as cattle, not pet. And that's the trap of using bare metal, and the trap of using, of caring for things on computer.
Yeah.
Everything is considered pet. If that server dies, a company will lose everything. Or if that database dies, company will lose everything. No, you should be able to go onto your computer, press a few buttons, and blow up that application server. And then you should be able to reinstantiate it, possibly with few commands, just a few commands, and then go and just turn around and go away. And in 5 minutes, that application server should be completely the same or completely different, but applications should work exactly the same. That's what containers offer us. So yes, your Postgres, MySQL, Redis should also go into a container, because guess what? Containers are equally close to the kernel of the host system as your application running in the user space, in the normal user space you would think of what in VM world would be called DOM0, if not technically actually closer, because there is this tiny thing or big thing called init system that is between the application, the kernel, something that is a lot smaller, if at all existing, in a container.
Yeah, this is what I'm going through right now. I'm currently deploying my home lab, and instead of isolating everything in their separate LXCs, I put everything in a single. Okay, people are gonna call me crazy in the comments, or in the chat, but on an Arch server, instead of putting them in separate LXCs, they're all in a single VM with Arch server. So I learned recently from a channel called DB Tech, David, that putting them in separate LXCs in case one one container goes down, and I have to revert it back to a previous date, instead of reverting the whole entire system to a previous date, thus breaking other containers, I just revert back a single LXC and I'm back up and running. And all my databases, like BigPod said, should be on a separate virtual machine. So in case the container goes down, I can redeploy it and get my data back in 5 minutes instead of spending the entire day having to respin everything up.
Recently, I had this conversation with someone, and they were convincing me that that path for a database is better because you have 0.1% better performance if you have it on host machine.
Yeah.
The problem was that if I went and blew that machine up, because that machine was to get that 0.1% efficiency, which it didn't matter because they were nowhere near filling the system up. It was that by blowing that system up, the people who I was talking to would basically lose everything.
Yeah.
Basically lose all the data. But because I told them to separate the data and the application running, which is what a database in this case should be thought of, that server, yes, slightly slower. Yes, you might need a real replica. 1% sooner. What happens is, even if that application server blows up, or that database server blows up, it doesn't matter because the data is on a completely separate array, which is stored or which is replicated over multiple machines, or should be replicated over multiple machines, and possibly backed up onto 2 other locations, one of them in a completely geographically different area, so that something like a natural disaster, like an earthquake, or that 3032 or that 2032 asteroid that will fall on Earth doesn't destroy that location completely and removes all the backups.
Yeah. That's exactly how it should be. But not everyone, like specifically home users like I am, will have the equipment to be able to do that. But
home users can make things like compromises on that sort. I make compromises at home, yes, but when I'm talking about professionally, those compromises
should not exist. Yes,
make you have problems. I don't do compromises when I do work stuff.
Yeah, because it's work, it's professional. You cannot time is, as they call it in the business, time is money. So
not just time is money. Simply losing data or losing a data server could mean losing the business.
Yes. That also goes into the same thing. So to be safe, always have your data in more separated, not connected. Don't put all your eggs in a single basket.
Is this the weekly message where we tell everybody to make a backup?
Yeah.
Just remind
also, yes.
Don't put your eggs in
make
a single
backup
basket.
And put it somewhere that is not even
it's not
close
in the
to
same
you.
room with your computer, right?
It's possible,
right.
not even the same city as you.
Yeah, just in case. Huh?
If you're in America, my recommendation would be put the data onto a new Europe server or Europe hosted data storage facility, and vice versa for Europeans.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's definitely good to have an offsite backup, because if the physical building burns down with your computer and the backup, well, you really didn't have a backup then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why when I started putting the databases in a separate VM, whenever I would lose a container, because since I don't know much about Docker or Podman, since people recommend Podman over Docker whenever you mention Docker. But when I started doing that, whenever I broke something, all I had to do was reinstall and point the container to the location of the database, and I was back up running in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, instead of having to bash my head against the wall to set it up again. So, yeah, and speaking of which, since we mentioned Flatpaks, what do you guys think about this hubbub around Flathub and Fedora? And
you talking about the little drama that's going on?
Yeah.
That little nothing. Fedora should stop with their nonsense. I understand why they're doing it. I think it's nonsense. Get away with it. Go use Flathub. Or
yeah, did you guys watch the Brody interview with the Fedora lead, where the Fedora lead completely botched the interview and he spoke about things that he had no clue about?
No, I haven't.
No.
When was that?
Because as I was watching
when
it,
was that? When did that interview come out?
Like less than a week ago.
Oh.
So basically, the Fedora lead started blaming Flathub for things he had no idea about. I was watching the interview and I was laughing throughout. I'm like, what is he talking about? Does he have any idea how Flathub works?
Like what? Give
like, for
examples.
example, like I'll give you one simple example. He was like, he mentioned at one point in the interview, he was mentioning how Flathub did not have any. It's Flathub's fault for Fedora having their own Flathub, because they didn't have any guidelines for building Flatpaks, when the guidelines are very strict. They do exist, and they are very strict on Flathub. So what was he talking about? He had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah, that's very strange, because when you go and really build any package format, they all have documentation. I've read the Flatpak documentation,
and they have very strict guidelines.
Like, it's very, you're right.
Yeah. But there are issues with Flathub or in general with Flatpak. It's not that Flatpak is super everything is great about it. There are some questionable things.
Yeah, but for a Fedora for Fedora lead to start talking about so I was throughout, and excuse me for the expression, but he was talking out his ass the entire interview. I'm like, and he's the lead of Fedora? What the?
I mean, just because he's the lead of Fedora, it doesn't necessarily make him an expert on Flathub, though. I mean,
I didn't say he needed to be an expert on Flathub, but he knew that the whole discussion of the interview is going to be revolved around Flatpak and the whole hubbub around Flatpak. He should have done his research before going.
If he was coming to talk specifically about that topic, maybe he should have sent somebody else then. If that's
exactly. That's how I felt the entire interview. Why did you?
Can you please send me a link to that video? I want to watch it, but I can't find it.
Yeah, I will send it. Give me a sec.
One thing I'm gonna say is that, first of all, he's fairly new, so there is that, and this might be his first interview. So there are some.
I always give people the benefit of the doubt. I mean, he probably just didn't. He's not up to speed on some of that stuff.
I'm also gonna defend him in other ways. Yes, there are problems with Flatpak. There are some legal problems with Flatpak that need to be addressed. Like, I don't know how big they actually are, but they probably will need to be addressed sooner or later. Like getting the license files into the right directories, because technically that might actually be important. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't actually speak to a lawyer.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
I was told by somebody who is fairly reliable source on that. I'm not gonna say who it is or why he's a fairly reliable source, but they told me that that essentially that's one of the issues they find with Flatpak from legal standpoint. So
because a lot of the free licenses require you to
yes.
distribute a copy of the license, and you've got to be able to find that license.
Not just the problem is that, but now here is my problem with it. You never accept a license.
Right.
As a user, you never accept a license. And that's the same problem with your standard package managers. You never actually accept a license. And technically speaking, as soon as it's any kind of language about as user, you need to as user able to accept that license. That's why at that point it becomes EULA, end user license agreement. And
most of our free licenses, typically they'll have somewhere in it that by using the software, you accept the license.
Yes, but that's actually not that actually might not be legal all around the world.
Well, sure.
Especially if you cannot first read that bit. If you cannot read that bit, you cannot actually agree to it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that needs to be that should have been addressed a long time ago with Flatpak, and an even longer time ago with most package managers. Only one of them I can think of that has any kind of protections against that.
Yeah, but the reason he mentioned, by the way, Big Pod, the link is in chat.
Yeah, thanks.
The one thing he did mention was the reason for Fedora to create their own Flatpaks, was just to give users the option, and the Flatpaks they had were a mirror of the RPMs.
Yes.
They were not modified versions of the RPMs. They were a mirror, a clone of the RPMs for users who preferred a Flatpak instead of the RPM.
Yeah, that's been fairly known these days. That basically they're just copy paste of RPMs.
Yeah, and they should not be considered as the developers the developers view way of doing things.
Sorry, that's a thing I'm gonna say that doesn't matter what he says. That's the reality is most people who use software who aren't either already well versed with Linux and open source, how it all works, will automatically go to the think of it as the viewpoint of the maintainers of it, because they are the ones who are written on software. They're the creators. So the fact that the packager doesn't one-to-one recreate experience how the maintainer wants it is a giant problem, no matter what. And that's another reason why packages should be made by maintainers, not random people on the internet.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. But expecting everyone who uses Linux to be well versed in Linux is a dream. Right now, the way I see it, from when I zoom out and I look at things the way they are today, it's people are using Linux because they're sick of Windows and they want to use something else. And since Mac has its own issues, the only other alternative they have is Linux. This is why they end up on Linux. They use it, and most of the users who switch to Linux will continue to distro hop endlessly. A lot of them will continue to distro hop because there's no one single distro out there that satisfies every single need that they have.
Actually, and that's another problem with Linux, the fact that there isn't one single Linux.
Yeah, and there's no standards.
Well, there'll never be a standard. You guys are on the standard stuff. We're never going to have one Linux. We're never going to have one init system. We're never going to have one package format.
Steve, I have to actually disagree with you a little bit. I think that most people who use Linux have never distro hopped ever. because most people who use Linux.
No, I would agree with that because most people that probably use desktop Linux haven't been using it long enough yet.
No.
Anybody
I
that's
have a
been using
different
it long
argument.
enough is definitely opt.
I have a different argument. Because that's the machine they got for work or at work, and all they do is
there are people
use
that
it.
are still running an Ubuntu LTS from 10 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there. That's your
sure,
normal
people
computer
have
user.
Reinstalled an upgrade. That's
They've
a different
never
story.
reinstalled. They've never done anything to their computer.
What I'm talking about is most people who use Linux got Linux as a laptop or a desktop from their workplace because that's what they use at work, and they won't play with that because that's their work. And
that's what I wanted to bring up with Dark Zero. Steve made a good point about a lot of Mac users eventually find their way to Linux, and I've seen a little bit of that on the internet. Like if you're going to Mac because you think you're going to get a little more freedom on Mac than Windows, then naturally you're eventually going to find Linux. And then when you get to Linux, you realize, damn, I can game on Linux. You can't game on a Mac. Like if you're going to play games, you can't do that on a Mac.
You can do it, but it's very limiting.
There's no games. Really, if you go to
their Windows games containerized in a Mac, wrapped in a Mac package.
Yeah. The Linux gaming experience is so much better.
Yeah, 100%. But there's another point to this. You mentioned it, DT, very well, might I add, is that there's a lot of people nowadays. Not a lot of people. There are some people, I don't want to generalize too much, but there are some people who had Linux installed on their system by their grandson, by their son, by their cousin, somebody in the family, and they've been running the same version of Linux for 10 plus years, and they didn't need to update because it works.
This is not a Linux problem. This is every OS. This is Windows, Mac. There's people that buy a computer, they never update it, they never reinstall. The only time they ever do anything is when that machine breaks, and then they go buy a new machine.
Yeah, because let's remember, for most people, computer is a tool, not a pet, like it is for us enthusiasts.
That small detail explains it all, because I since I have a computer formatting place, it's not even a computer repair store. All I do is format, reinstall operating systems. But the most common thing that happens is people come to me and they say, my son clicked on buttons and now my system doesn't work, so I have to reinstall what they are used to, and I completely disable updates.
It's great for the nerds. I mean, that's why there's so many really nice ThinkPads available on eBay right now. Like, that's why all of us Linux users have like a dozen of them on the shelf.
Great.
It's because all those people that got rid of machines unnecessarily, we just scoop them up.
Yeah, sure, I scooped up someone's ThinkPad. It's running. It's currently the only computer I have at home because all my computers are down in the store until I fix the desk situation. But the ThinkPads are awesome computers. Like church, just this is funny you should say that. But my dad's church over here recently got rid of desktops and laptops. Who ended up with them? I have a new ThinkPad, but that one is so old it's running Windows 8. And
I have one from that time period.
Yeah, they're good. Once I install Zero Linux on that, it's gonna run fast. And they gave me another Lenovo, but this time a desktop. A Lenovo desktop that I'm gonna relegate as a router. It's gonna become my home router. So Lenovo machines, people throw them away without knowing how valuable they are. To the right person, they're extremely valuable because they're solid machines. Those, I don't know what IBM, and now I don't know who, Lenovo is a standalone, I think, or I don't know who owns Lenovo now, but those machines are among the most solid machines I've ever laid my hands on.
Yeah, they really are.
I disagree.
They're well built.
They're I didn't say the. They are among the most solid machines out there right now.
Honestly, in my experience, Dell makes better laptops than ThinkPads.
Really? What laptops?
Dell.
No, no. I own the Dell. It's now in the trash because even installing something like that runs LXQT that I installed on it or XFCE starts hanging. And who the hell at Dell had the idea of having a 4K touchscreen on a 12-inch monitor? They want to send people to wear glasses.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what people want. People
No,
think
that's
that
not what people want.
Yes,
Nobody
it is
wants
what
a
people want.
4K screen.
I think people do want a touch screen. A lot of the
touchscreen. Okay, I would agree on a touchscreen, but
No, just
4K
touch
on a
screen.
12-inch.
Yes. People. You should remember that at the end of the day, they sell what sells, not what is most logical.
And there's
They
a
sell
lot
what
of people
sells.
that
And
want
guess
the
what? A lot of people just want that 4K sticker that is on the box, or for a spec sheet to say 4K.
Well, those people are not smart.
A lot of
Doesn't
people, when they buy a
matter.
laptop now, they really want a
sells.
tablet.
That's what sells. It doesn't matter how smart these people are. It's what sells. That's what matters to the company like Dell, to the company like Lenovo, to the company like HP. It matters what sells. And if 4K on a 12-inch computer sells, okay, it sells. They're gonna make a SKU of that. It's the same reason why Sony in one of their phones called Z5, I don't remember which Z5.
Yeah, 4K screen. I know. I
Made a
remember that
4
phone.
screen. I remember that phone. A friend of mine had it. I had a scaled down version of that, low price version of that phone. Because just the fact that it had 4K screen sold the phone. Nothing else. Just the fact that it had 4K screen sold the phone. That's the reality. People look at bigger numbers. People look at bigger numbers, bigger words.
Yeah, I would agree. When people who want to run 3D
that's
Studio
what
Max
easy to sell.
buy themselves a Mac that doesn't run 3D Studio Max, but they use it as an excuse to buy a Mac, just to have a Mac, to have the Mac logo, to boast about it. That's who Apple targets.
Most people that buy a Mac, I would venture, probably don't even really know all the specs of the Macs they're buying.
Yeah,
that's a lot of the crowd. But
trust me, I know. I used to work there.
I think quite a good chunk of them do. Like it's like any other computer. We're talking about when we talk about people who know what they're talking about when it comes to computers. We're always talking about 5% at best. Whether it be computers with Windows, whether it be computer with macOS, and let's be real, whether it be talking about computers with Linux.
No,
guys, I want to ask a question I got from one of the patrons, and he was asking me this question, and it's not something I really could answer, but I know a lot of you guys probably have a better perspective on this. He was asking. He said, DT, I was wondering if you had any advice for all the stuff you've done in research about free and open source projects. I'm currently working on a Haskell-like language, and I'm going to release version 0.1 in approximately 4 months. And I want to make sure that I take care of the things that many open source programmers neglect. Basically, they build what they want without appropriately involving the community. And I figured that you'd have a handle on things you like to see in open source projects and make them pleasant to use and easy to contribute to. If you got any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. So he's writing his own programming language, but whatever software project. He's getting ready to release it to the public, and he wants to start involving the community. He wants to make sure he adds features and things that the community wants. So I don't know. My thoughts on that. Obviously, I'm not a programmer or developer. I don't live in that world. I don't live also in the community aspect of Linux. I pretty much avoid the community. So I'm going to ask you guys.
I don't think I really help here because I'm in enterprise world.
Right.
But someone who is right now making a tool for public consumption, I would say talk with people you know.
Yeah. Well, I thought
as them
Steve
to-
might have
or-
a better idea because he obviously has a community around his distro that he maintains.
Not only distro, but he hits home with this one, because I'm working on a Arch toolkit. I have been working on an Arch toolkit that I have been working on for a long time. You have to listen to people in the know, because if you listen to just users, you're gonna end up with a lot of demands slash because in the free open source community right now, unfortunately, I have to say that people demand rather than request, because most requests are phrased as demands.
Oh, yeah.
For whatever reason, I don't understand it. I will never understand it. I will keep ignoring it. So as long as you ignore the demand style things, you just listen to the people who are in the know, who have programmed at some point in their lives. They are more constructive. They tend to be more constructive than just regular Joes, because regular Joes don't know what goes into development, and they're going to start asking for things that are not feasible.
I will say the community will oftentimes want more than what you're able to provide.
Exactly.
So
and it's up to you how you
and
manage.
more what you would want to provide.
You really have to
say
be
that.
You kind of have to be a dictator. You kind of have to be an a-hole at some point, because because even the stuff I put out there on my GitLab and stuff, people that want to contribute or me to actually do the work for them. Hey, I think you need to do this with this program that and I'm like, no, that's not what my original intention was. I have no interest in going this completely new direction that you're asking about. Not going to do it. And I'll just be straightforward with them. I shut them down immediately.
Yeah,
because I don't even want to hear the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, the way
only opinions that matter about your projects are your opinions and opinions of people who you choose to listen to.
Don't be afraid to say no to people. You're going to say no probably
and opinions
a lot more than you'll
you
say
choose
yes
to listen to.
Yeah, like for example, in my case, the way I circumvented this, it's a soft circumvention, because the way I did it was, if you want to request things, you have to have donated for the project to be able to voice your requests. If you haven't donated to the project, like to get the ISO or any of the ISOs, so you won't be able to request anything. You can throw ideas on Discord, but I can ignore them because you haven't donated. But if you donate and support the project financially, then you get the ISO plus the opportunity to have your voices heard. This is I call it a soft circumvention, because not everybody will do it. So this is how I filter out the noise, because if I give them the total freedom to request things, I will end up with 1 billion requests and things that I will not be able to do.
Another thing I've told a lot of people in the past about any of my stuff, if they ask me about something and it's completely not what I want to do with it, I just tell them, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do that. Feel free to fork it.
Yep.
It's free and open
another
source
way
software. You take it, you build this thing that you're asking about anyway. You go do it yourself. You don't need me to do it, right?
I do this. I do similar like you, but less because it sounds too. I don't want to sound too negative towards people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to seem a little bit more open-minded, because I've been criticized for being closed-minded before. So I was like, I'll stay open-minded, but in order for your voices to be heard, you would need to have donated to the project. Otherwise, and I did learn. You mentioned it before, DT, to always learn how to say no. And I learned that from I started doing that since you mentioned it, and I've got less and less demands.
No, I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of a very large and popular software project where the developer ran it like a dictator, and it was, great. Vim, Brand Molinar, rest in peace. He ran that thing the way he wanted to run it, right? And he gave 0 F's about what everybody else thought.
NeoVim is
Oh,
better,
by the way,
way.
speaking of Vim, now Zero Linux, the Gnome edition includes Neovide.
Oh.
And Drew Just a Guy Linux's config.
Cool.
Yep, and it looks a lot like Emacs. It feels like Emacs. When I first launched it, when you launch it, it kind of starts downloading things just like Emacs does.
Sure. So, yeah, it has its own package manager.
Yeah. So I was like, cool. That reminds me of DT's Emacs. So now I have your config and Just a Guy Linux's config for different programs, but similar.
Yeah.
If you want to keep your program under wraps or your project under wraps for a while, but you still want to solicit some feedback, find people who you trust, who would be users of your program, of your project.
Right. Exactly.
I'm gonna just quickly do an example of that. DT, you are a creator. If do you use any tools, or do you want to use any tools while you record your videos to make your production process easier?
Sure.
Like what? Give me a couple of examples.
Well, I mean, as a content creator, some examples I could give is, maybe automating, like adding annotations in videos, like taking show notes, and, making the video editing process easier, by automating certain things.
Have you ever considered using a tool which you could very easily notate, say, when you have cuts, when you have things like, let's say you need to do a cut during the recording process, you could quickly annotate onto your video or onto a file without like doing more than just a press of a button. Annotate, here's a cut in the video. Or
every time you have to make an annotation or a title clip, you have to spend 30 seconds, a minute. If you got 20 or 30 of those things to find that place,
to find where it is and all that. Yes.
It would easily cut half an hour's worth of work out of a video.
Right? I know. I am making such a tool right now. I make a podcast, that's probably some of you know. And one of the things that always makes me mad when I'm editing it, if I forget to make myself a list of things that we do, like let's say when we have a cut, let's say I need to take a break, or somebody has a door, they are like 5-minute cuts, but finding that cut where it is, there is somewhere a cut you need to do, but where is it? And then you have to scrub through the entire video. I am making a tool which will be publicly available as basically the service on the internet, where you'll be able to you will get a very basic clean UI where you start the time, or the time when you click record, and anytime something happens, let's say you're going you have to stop, you press a button and it will note for you when in the recording you stopped, and all you then do is grab a file out of it, and you can add it into your video editor of choice, and you will get automatic markers. Of course, some of the editing software doesn't support that, but that's why we have options like export as text file, and you can then very easily find those cuts. Honestly, just doing that, I believe, removed quarter of the time of my editing process.
Yeah.
Because one of the passes was just finding those cuts. That was just one of the passes of the video process. And when a podcast episode runs an hour long, that is quite a bit of time.
Yeah, you got a lot more work because you're doing long form content. Yeah, the editing process is brutal, right?
And in the future, you could export that as a, let's say, if you have, let's say, segments of the video, and you can annotate those segments, you could easily export them as timestamps for YouTube, for example.
That was the next thing I was going to suggest is automating timestamps.
Yeah. Well, I can further Big Pod's point there. If my brother hadn't shown me this tool, there's a tool. Okay, it's AI, but it's a service basically where you upload your video, you record your long form or short form video, whatever. You upload it there, and it will create for you B-roll, A-roll, annotate, cuts, fixes the sound. It does all that. It's a service you have to pay for, of course. It's like $25 a month or whatever. But you upload a video, and we'll do all that for you, and then give you the end result within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, well, for me, it's going to take a day because the upload will take 3/4 of the day, but on my shitty connection. But for people with fast connection, it's going to be 5 minutes, and you're basically done. If you don't like something, you tell the AI, no, you did something wrong here. It's not a place for a B-roll. It's like generating an image on AI. So you do your modifications, and then once you're happy, you download the video, and you push to YouTube, or you can push it directly through AI. Let AI upload the video directly to YouTube. So my brother showed me that. When he showed me that, I was like, yeah, I'm coming back to YouTube. Now that the editing process is done with in 5 minutes, cool. I'm coming back to YouTube.
As a distro maintainer, you could just go the Eric Dubois route and just turn on your camera about 10 different times a day, and you just upload
whatever,
like half a dozen videos every day, like that guy does.
That's what I want to avoid. But services like this.
And I get so many notifications about Eric Dubois. Like, man, he's been like, you just published a video 10 minutes ago. You're publishing another one already.
Yeah. But we make fun of Eric Dubois sometimes, but a lot of his videos tend to be very useful. Like I've used a lot of his
great
videos.
I mean,
yeah. For me, I use a lot of his videos, like especially when it comes to Calamares. Whenever a major change happens in Calamares, I do not go read the README. I don't go read the README. I just watch this video.
Well, I wanted to actually talk to you a little bit. I did that video recently about, some of the reasons why a lot of people love Arch Linux. And one of the things I mentioned in that video, and I knew it was controversial when I said it, is that Arch is easy to install.
Well, now that you mention it, it's you mentioned it in the video as well. That's a stigma from old time, where the only way to install Linux was following the Arch Linux. The only way to install Arch is to follow the Arch wiki. But now with the Arch install script and Calamares is more universal because it's being used on Debian and other distros. But Arch install.
Well, I think a lot of people naturally think a GUI installer is going to be easier than a command line installer. But depending on how complicated you make the GUI or how simple you make the command line process, it's not really the Arch Linux install, as far as just your standard command line install, is what, 10 or 12 things you paste in the terminal, copy paste from the wiki, boom, you're done in like 10 minutes, maybe less than 10 minutes because it doesn't install much.
Yes, but it isn't just about how hard it is, but it's how perceivably hard it is. How
perceivably hard
it looks to be.
The thing that scares people most in the command line is because on the Arch wiki, it tells users, this is the part where people hang a lot. And I watched a lot of people hang on this specific location, partition. Because on the Arch wiki,
that's easily that and the bootloader. Those are really the only two things that I think would scare People,
Yeah,
people
because
that are
you
new.
have
It
so
says,
many
what do you do?
bootloaders.
Yeah.
You got systemd, you got refind, you got
Yeah.
no bootloader, you got, and plus the partitioning,
Well, here's the thing.
because on the Arch
if I was creating a command line install process for DTOS, whatever my distribution is, right? You know, I would give users the option, hey, you can use fdisk and manually partition the drive if you know what, or you know what, I could do this for you. I have an automated process. Give them the recipe I'm going to use to automatically partition the drive for them if they wanted to, me to do that.
That's the problem, because we cannot automate this for them, because not every user is going to install it on an SDA. Some people are going to install it on NVMEs. Other people are going to install it on a
well, you
USB.
have to warn them, hey, I'm writing to this drive. Is this okay?
Yeah.
And that way they have the opportunity to decline it and, actually do it themselves if that's not right.
Yeah. Like on the if you follow the Arch Wiki, on the Arch
Wiki, because there's plenty of times I install things on camera, like in VMs, where if I just took the automatic install in Calamares or the Ubuntu installer, some of these distros, whatever installer they're using as far as the graphical ones, sometimes they do really weird stuff. Like, hey, they want to create a 16 gig swap partition in a VM that I only gave 20 gigs of space. Like, that's insane, right?
Yeah,
then I go
that's not
manually
insane.
partition the drive.
That's not insane, because Calamares, a lot of GUI installers use the logic. The logic of swap is it has to have enough, the same amount as your RAM to be able to successfully go into hibernation. That's the logic that is
they
required.
Should be logical and not create a swap partition bigger than the main partition. Like, that's kind of
logical. That's not logical.
Right?
Well, that's a bug.
that's a bug, or B, just an oversight, because reality is
but
most people just don't do that. Don't just install on a system with 20 gigabytes of storage.
But I know, like, the Arch installation process, I know a lot of people get hung up on the bootloader. You could easily automate that, because installing grub and making the config, I mean, I could just do that for them.
That's what I automated using my DE install scripts. I automate
like, hey, if you don't want to use grub, you can go read the wiki and install refind or systemd boot or whatever bootloader you want to use, but I'm going to install grub for you if you want it. You want it? Yes or no? Boom.
Yeah,
done.
this is what I did in my is what I automated in my DE install scripts. But the other thing is, I don't know if any of you noticed lately, but Calamares recently we did a survey, Eric and I, separately, not together, but separately, we did a survey, and we noticed that people don't use less people use the encryption option in Calamares, so we decided to completely hide it.
Yeah,
we completely hid that option from Calamares. Now you just simply select the drive, and then what
the encryption option. Eric.
What's the rationale? What's the rationale of hiding the encryption option?
Well, I was about to get there, Big Pod. Eric offers so many options in his installer, depending on what bootloader and what file system, the encryption may not work depending on the user's choices. So that may be why he was,
I said, we did a survey, and we saw that the percentage of people who actually used the encryption option in Calamares were less than 0.01%. So
really
great.
And it caused, and for those who tried it, didn't know what it meant and what it involved, we mentioned it multiple times that if you select the encryption in Calamares, it will encrypt the boot, not the root. And so those people didn't understand it, and they were expecting it to encrypt the boot and the root. I'm like, no.
Like in good installer should encrypt both. Actually,
but in Calamares it does not. If you select it in Calamares,
that's a problem. Yeah. Well,
in Calamares it wasn't built in a way where it encrypted both, and nobody did it in a way because the main maintainer of or the creator of Calamares left the project. He's just a bystander now. He just pushes the releases because he's the only one with the ability to. But he didn't grow. Nobody grew the feature, so it became stagnant, and it only encrypted the boot.
Yeah.
So we decided, Eric and I, separately at the same time. It was a
Well, there's a
coincidence,
couple of problems. There's a couple of problems with Calamares. For one thing, it's such a niche kind of piece of software because only distro maintainers care about it, right? They're the only ones that are going to use it. And then everyone's doing their own thing and basing off of various bases like Debian and Arch and, whatever, Ubuntu. And, everybody's, it's almost impossible to make that thing good. I don't think
it is. I agree
really,
with you, because if you notice that all the distros that use Calamares, some of them use a deprecated version, like 3.2.6.
I have noticed that.
and some use the latest bleeding edge not the latest stable release. And people like me and Arco Linux, we use the latest commit.
Well, that was another thing I was going to mention, is they're constantly pushing updates and changing things. And that's very tough for a distro maintainer to have to keep up and maintain his own build of Calamares, because everybody has to maintain their own build of it.
It's not actually a build. It's for me, in my case, that's only my case. I don't know if anybody else does it this way. I just build Calamares from source. So whatever they have on their main GitHub is what I pull. The only difference between mine and theirs is the config, the Calamares config. I decide what ends up in because this is how you ship Calamares. You got the main app, and you got a separate package for the config that overrides the included config. So the only thing I modify is my config, and what I modify in my config is the name of the packages that it should delete and the logos. That's it. I follow upstream to the T. I just replace their logo with mine and the colors. That's it. And the name of the packages that it should remove, because my package is called Calamares app and Calamares CFG. So
I have noticed, though, the more, I look at these various distros over the years, people used to customize the Calamares installer a lot more than they do now. I think a lot of distro maintainers have gotten to the point they try to keep it as basic as possible because it's just too hard to start modifying things and then those changes breaking on you with the next release of things.
Yeah, so in my case, it's not the reason why I do it. I customize it because I want it to be different, to look different than others.
Well, there's some distros that don't even give custom logos and artwork. Like, it's just the default images, the placeholders from the Calamares package.
Looking at
I
you,
always
Nobara.
Find kind of weird. Yeah.
Looking at you, Nobara.
They're not the only ones. There's several.
But for me, the reason I modified the look is because I didn't want to look like everybody else, and I wanted to give the impression of customization from the get-go. I wanted the users to know what Zero Linux is all about. Is all about customization. So why not customize the installer as well? If you notice, you will notice if you use the Gnome edition, the user creation page is stock, but dark, of course, but stock. Whereas on KDE version, it's using the Qt version of the user creation page. It's more organized, it's more clean, it's more, all the boxes are symmetrical and correctly sized and everything. Whereas on the Gnome edition, I left it because I didn't want to use, because Calamares is a Qt application, so I didn't want to have to be forced to use Qt theming in order to on Gnome in order to theme Calamares. I didn't want to touch Qt on the Gnome edition, and the reason because the whole reason for the Gnome edition of Zero Linux for existing is stability. So no third-party themes. So no third-party tools that modify the system, the desktop environment. So
one thing I noticed with Arco recently, a couple months back, when they were changing the way they build the ISOs. You know, they got what 3 main products, but then they've got this 4th one, the Arco install. It's kind of like the Arch install script, but they, you know.
Oh yeah, they modified it. Yeah, Arco install. Arco install.
And I think that's smart. You know, that way you don't have to fool with the craziness with a GUI installer. Just
Speaking
use
of
the
that,
existing Arch install script. Just modify that.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we had the idea at the same time. Him and I, we think on the same level. I was working on my version when he released his, but that's why I stopped working on my version. I was like, "There's the Arco install. I don't want to release something too similar to his, so I stopped working on it. Plus, it was a little bit too hard work for me because I don't understand Python.
Yeah, just take his work if he's already done the Python.
Yeah, the whole reason I wanted to create my own that has only KDE and GNOME, but if I did that, I felt like I would be taken away from users, because the way users who like the Arch install script love the amount of desktop environments and window managers.
I think what you and Eric should do is get together along with the folks at Cache and Garuda or whatever, have this Arch install script that just installs, hey, you want Arco Linux, or you want Zero Linux, or you want Cache OS, right?
Good luck doing
all the distros.
The way the community, the way the maintainer community is going. Good luck doing that.
Oh yeah. Well,
everybody wants to go steer their direction.
I'm sure there'd be a few of you that would probably be okay with it.
Eric and I would agree 100% on many things, and this might happen if we work together, Eric and I. But include Cache? No way. No way including Cache. Cache are very opinionated.
Yeah.
They're great. They're awesome developers at what they do, but working together with them
well, here's the thing. You don't necessarily have to include them in the thing, as far as you could add Cache OS as an option to the script without involving them. All you need to do is add their mirrors.
No, you can't.
Add their mirrors.
No, you can't. And then you can't. I'll tell you why. Because I tried including an option in my toolkit that would enable the Cache OS repos. I got yelled at by the Cache OS developers.
Well, they can yell at you, but if those want the repos, I mean, they can add them. I mean, that's
not necessarily.
They don't want distros, third-party distros, distributing their repositories.
Yeah, they don't want you hitting their servers unless you're running their distro. I get that.
And all they need to do is place a tiny little file right somewhere on their file system. That is publicly accessible, and it says, you're out of luck.
No, but here's the oxymoron. The oxymoron is they have a page on their website that shows users how to add their repositories on their own distro.
Yeah.
On their own, whatever they're running.
That's an
oxymoron. They don't allow distro maintainers to include their distros.
It's actually not an oxymoron. It's actually completely logical. They do not want you to distribute their
distribution, basically
their software, essentially. But they're okay with people, even on other distributions, using their software. That's the difference. You're not using their software; you're distributing it.
Yeah, but here's my problem with their script. If you run the script, they tell you to run on their page. If you follow the instructions, their repos are going to be added above the Arch repositories, above any other repositories, giving them precedence.
Yes,
so essentially,
makes sense.
Anybody who adds their repositories will end up with Cache OS.
Yeah, that's kind of the point.
Knowing what Cache OS does actually makes sense.
They want you to convert your whatever distro you're running to their distro.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, that's essentially what you could do.
Essentially what is the end result, but that's not the point. The point, I bet, because that's what they do, is that they want you to put it at the first place, because that way you will ensure that you get their version of software, which is supposedly compiled better than, let's say, Arch's.
Yeah, and then they compile software with different Yeah.
different flags.
Right,
Better
exactly.
flags, let's say.
Right.
Let's say better flags. Let's say they are enabled for specific versions of the CPU, which I absolutely hate. The idea
Yeah.
of
Well, for
versions
one
of
thing,
exist
he mentioned,
versions.
they maintain their own kernel. They may want to make sure that, you're getting the right build of their kernel versus what's in the standard Arch repos.
Yeah, but what if I want I just want a few packages from their repo. I don't want them to convert my system to an optimized version, because I'm perfectly okay with my system as it is. It's only is that thing only knowledgeable users will be able to do. Move the repositories down.
Yes.
Not everybody will know how, though.
Because at the end of the day, you should remember that adding new repositories is an advanced user task, no matter what you're doing.
That's a
user problem, not a them problem. They're trying to simplify it for most users. Most users want, if they're gonna be adding caches, they want caches mirrors or repositories. They want the best build, or supposedly the best build of the software.
Yeah,
therefore
you said it right.
Serves
you said it
them
right,
right.
Supposed, because Arch, they were going to work on v4, v3, v4 version of their packages. Then they stopped because they saw that the benefit is between 1% and 3%.
The reason I say supposed is because I myself haven't confirmed it is actually better. It is.
I tried, and there are articles.
Doesn't matter what other people. I haven't. So I am doing what is in professional world called CYA, covering your ass.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. That's why I add my repo at the bottom, because I don't offer packages that are very important. But
just real quick, I wanted to answer a question in the chat from Just a Guy Linux. He was asking, doesn't Ubuntu do the same thing with Debian? Don't their packages take precedent over Debian?
No.
Well, no. Ubuntu has their own repos, so they're not hitting the Debian servers at all.
They never
maintain their own build everything.
If you install Ubuntu, you don't ever hit Debian, because they
would kill the Debian servers if they. I mean, they would bring
most
Debian
packages. That's first thing. If you add yourself Ubuntu repos, you're creating what is called a Frank Ubuntu or Frank and Debian. Sorry for the mistake, and you should never do it because that's a horrible mess you shouldn't ever deal with, because you're gonna have
because they do build certain packages differently.
All sort of problems. Same reason why you shouldn't. Why it's a good thing Pop! OS now has their own mirrors, because of that exact reason, which is also the reason why Linus Sebastian's computer at the time was deleted.
Yeah, every large distribution, if you've got a big user base, which Ubuntu has a gigantic user base, they have to maintain their own repos, because if they were pegging somebody else's repos, they would destroy that distribution and their servers, and they would just piss off a lot of people. So Ubuntu rebuilds all the Debian packages and hosts them themselves. Yeah, and that's why Ubuntu years ago, they had a real problem with Linux Mint, because Linux Mint was using the Ubuntu repos. So you got all these millions of Mint users that are pegging the Ubuntu servers, and they're like, hey, maintain your own repos. Don't be hitting our repos like that.
Yeah, that's why CachyOS does it nowadays. They they rebuild the entire KDE stack. I was like, dude, you got a huge machine, and they do. They have a server that builds packages 24/7.
Yeah, you just automate the process. That's all you do. Yeah,
that's nothing that's special. Like, you should remember what Ubuntu or Canonical has like 50 machines that are just for building packages. And if I remember correctly, like Fedora has like something like 20 or 30 machines that are just there to be so-called build servers. I have two virtual machines that are only for building packages.
Yeah, and Arch now are going to have one mega machine to build packages and sign packages.
Finally.
Yeah, that's where the grant went to in Arch, and now I just discovered that Arch are currently in the works with Microsoft to include Arch officially as a WSL.
It's long overdue.
Okay.
Yeah, there was an official package on the Microsoft Store for a long time, but they talked to the maintainer of that package to take it down. They convinced them to take it down because if they kept it up, their signature will conflict with his signature. So one of the developers over at Arch, Antise, the French guy, he was a guest on the French podcast. I watched it, and he showed the whole manifest, the JSON file that Microsoft uses to distribute WSL images. He showed that he got the discussion with the guy responsible for adding the distribution to the JSON file. He got the confirmation that it'll be added within a couple of weeks.
Well, it's very important that Windows users can finally say, I use Arch, by the way.
Yep. Yep.
Okay,
Yep,
let me correct myself. I was wrong. Canonical has like 405 machines that are only that are for builds. Yes, 400. They're probably virtual machines. I would guess they're probably like good chunk less.
Probably. How many of those are for like the development branches?
It doesn't matter. All builds the same. It's a Launchpad build farm.
No.
I wish I had access to something like that.
If you're building
we had access to something like that.
If you use Launchpad, you do have access to that.
Yeah.
But like the breakdown of machines is AMD 64, they have 132 builders. ARM 64, they have 123.
That's right. They have Ubuntu ARM. I forgot about that.
Yeah, for ARM EL, that's something I don't know, because those are like very complex things on ARM that I fucking hate. You have also 123, and for ARM HF as well 123 with i386 132. My guess is those are shared between AMD 64 and i386, basically, depending on how you create a VM.
They're still maintaining i386?
Yes, of course.
Oh,
still have
okay.
builders.
Debian is dropping i386.
Well, if you want to create a PPA with i386 package, they need to have a builder for it.
Don't they still have some LTS servers that are still on 32-bit?
Also that, yeah, they have to build for that. They also have PPC 64 EL and RISC 64 and S386,
nice.
S390X. EL, that could be probably like Little Endian.
Well,
that's probably Little Endian, whatever that is. Some CPU thing I don't understand.
Yeah, on the side note, the benefit of packaging your things yourself is on CachyOS's end, they already packaged they fixed the issue with KWin recently with Plasma 6.3, which caused KWin to completely bork itself when you dragged Windows to the top, and things like video players that are rendering something to the top, it would cause the system and the whole thing to crash and bork itself. They are already shipping the version with the patch, whereas on Arch, they're still casually sitting on the faulty package until they get the version with the patch coming next month. So we regular users have to wait, who don't build anything ourselves. Not users, I mean maintainers. Who rely on Arch. We have to stick 1 more month to a faulty version of KWin. Whereas CachyOS, because they build everything themselves, they compile everything themselves, they already have the package with the patch. They sent it off to their users already.
Yep.
That's a big benefit. That's a huge benefit.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm obviously I don't run Plasma, so I don't follow, but I know Arch has had problems, keeping up with, all the constant change with KDE and with Qt.
Yeah.
So, Yeah,
And
you're much more
on the
you're
plus
much more
note,
involved in that than probably the rest of us.
yeah, on the plus note, you know how people constantly complained about the fragmentation, the theming fragmentation on KDE?
Yes.
Well, now KDE are working on a unified system, theming system, rising system called Union, because it took place at Union, a conference where a gathering they have once a year. Mm-hmm. So they called it Union, KDE Union. What this will do is you will have like something similar to Cosmic right now. If you want to apply a theme, it's a single file. And it will take care of everything, GTK, Qt, and everything.
That's the way it should be done, because right now it's a mess.
Yeah. So they heard the complaints, and they've been, according to Nico Lobe, one of the developers of KDE, it's work in progress, and they listen to the users, to the complaints and everything. We will still be able to use the old way of rising KDE, but this will be a more efficient way to rise KDE. So it's in the works. It's coming at some point in the future, but they need more contributors, basically.
Well, but everybody needs more contributors, right?
Yeah, but it's a good thing that that they're working on such a thing, because it's been annoying to rise KDE for the longest time.
It's not just KDE. I mean, it's all the GTK desktops as well, and then you got so much, fragmentation with all of it.
Yeah.
And then you've got past versions of, GTK and Qt, and they're always, the next version of GTK and Qt come out, like next week or whatever. And then the old stuff breaks, and it's just a mess. Theming on Linux has always been.
Yeah, well, that's why
problem.
That's why on Zero Linux I will never rise GNOME, for example. And
you're
that's
just
why
shipping with Adwaita, and that's it.
Yeah, Adwaita.org. Yeah, I used the purple accent color to make the colors go with the icon theme that I chose, which is
right.
Tela circle purple. But the whole idea is I don't want to mess with theming on GNOME, and I only included 7 extensions. Yeah. If people want to bloat their system with more extensions, it's up to them. I just added the useful ones. That's it. I'm not gonna touch. I'm not gonna touch GNOME with a 10-foot pole anymore.
Well, I'm sure you got a lot of users that want it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's been very popular. The GNOME edition has been very popular because there's a lot of GNOME lovers out there. I didn't know. And
I'd rather use it than KDE if I had to choose between the two.
Yeah, that's another reason why people choose it, because KDE has been flaky for the longest time, and GNOME stays out of your way while you do your work or you game. And while I have Zero Linux GNOME edition and KDE edition in dual boot. And when I use GNOME, and I gotta be honest, dude, it's so fluid, so smooth, so stable, so it's perfect for people who just want less headaches. But I still prefer KDE because I keep changing things around, and I like to drag and drop things.
If you're somebody that likes to constantly tweak things and play with things, KDE's a better desktop for you. If you're somebody that doesn't care about the desktop at all, GNOME's kind of much more minimal and out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for the GNOME edition, the only change that will take place in the next version, because I switched back to quarterly releases, because recently KDE and GNOME have been receiving so few major changes. Like releasing an ISO once a month is pointless, and as long as the users keep updating their system, they're up to date. So, but and I have an option now in my toolkit that allow, if I release new features, small features, they will be able to get those features with a click of a button in my toolkit. So, and that's thanks to a user that I was talking to the other day on Discord. But I went back to quarterly, and the GNOME for whatever reason, I feel like if you are serious about the computer you're using, you just want to install and forget, GNOME is the best desktop environment. Install and forget. Everything works in GNOME. Unless you're a gamer, you'll always have a problem because VRR doesn't work, this doesn't work. You always have, gaming on GNOME
It's not good.
kind of, because on KDE they've had VRR support for the longest time, but GNOME, they're taking their time. So if you're a gamer, you always have a reason not to use GNOME. But if you're just a user, regular user, you're never going to have a reason not to use GNOME. Whereas KDE, I am so honest. I even mentioned it on my wiki, and I said, KDE, if you're willing, like you said, if you're willing to put up with you love customization and you're willing to put up with a few issues here and there, it's the right DE for you. I mentioned it on the wiki.
I think it all comes down to, does the user actually interact with his desktop environment all that often? If not, then GNOME's perfect.
Yeah,
you know, because I'm not gonna. There's nothing in GNOME as far as I'm not gonna really use their menu system or anything. Like, I'm just going to launch Emacs full screen on occasion, and that's pretty much my desktop. You know, at that point.
It's a long way for me to say that. Although I do call myself the KDE sellout, but I am mature enough to admit that there are desktop environments that are better than KDE when it comes to a serious person. And one of them being GNOME. GNOME is the other desktop environment I'll use, but with a small parentheses or air quotes, we'll see what Cosmic comes up with when it becomes stable. Because Cosmic, the theming on Cosmic is bar none one of the best, because it's a single file. You download, you double click it, done deal. It's imported, and then you apply it if you want to, and that's it. And that's as far as Cosmic and GTK apps are concerned. Qt apps, TBD, to be determined. So, but as far as GTK and Cosmic apps go, theming is amazing. And the only change that will take place on the next version of GNOME is I'm going to be replacing Ghosty with Tixis, because it's more developer friendly than Ghosty is. Ghosty is for everyone, whereas Tixis is for everyone, as well as and it's very it targets developers a lot more, especially those who use DistroBox and Docker containers, because it's got native integration. So I'm going to be including that when the new release comes in June. So I just need to create a out-of-the-box config before I release it.
Yeah, I'm never played with
Tixis. Tixis is amazing. I tried it. The only issue I have with Tixis is it doesn't support fast fetch image or image rendering.
But that's a terminal.
Well, image rendering. What I meant was
terminal. Come on.
What I meant was because when you open a terminal on Zero Linux, it runs fast fetch. And I like to include my logo as a PNG, not as an ASCII.
The terminal is text only, Steve.
But I like the image, the PNG logo.
You're a heretic trying to put an image in a terminal. That's not the correct thing.
That's why people love Crusader so much. It renders images.
Crusader, the file manager.
Yeah. Not Crusader. What is the file manager that runs?
Oh, you're talking about console, the KDE terminal?
No.
Is it rendered?
There's a file manager, a terminal-based file manager that renders images. I forgot the name of it.
Oh, Ranger.
Ranger. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people use Ranger, because it renders images. So there'll be a niche of people who like what I like. So I like displaying my logo as an image, not as an ASCII, because it's a nightmare creating an ASCII, colored ASCII.
It's a nightmare? That's an overstatement a little bit, Steve. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I tried many times to get my ASCII logo.
There
to
are
appear.
tools actually, some online that you can feed it like a
I tried
picture,
all
and
of them.
it'll
I tried
create
all
an
of them.
ASCII art for you. Yeah, I mean,
Regular ASCII art, yes, but when it comes to like for me, I want the A to be purple and the X to be white, or vice versa, and start wanting to mess around with it. Not so much.
Yeah, you got to get the color codes right. Yeah, and that can
Yeah,
be tricky.
so
Yeah.
that was a nightmare. So I switched to an image. When I saw that console supported images and fast fetch, also, I was
I'd
like,
say just outsource that job, put it on Fiverr.
yeah. No, I'm not going to put that on Fiverr. I need to start getting work from Fiverr because I need to make money.
Hey, here's an idea, and you might be surprised by the results. Ask ChatGPT to create that for you.
Speaking of that, I wanted to point out something. Now, when I do development work, I use Cursor.
You use who?
Cursor. It's called Cursor AI. Cursor AI is basically.
I don't know that one. I'm going to add that to my list along with Meta.ai and ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude and Gemini. How many AIs do I need?
Chat.
No. But Cursor AI basically is Kate on steroids. It's a code editor with embedded AI on the side, and it's Sonnet. They use Sonnet, the best code editing AI ever.
Oh yeah, Cursor. That's the VS Code fork with AI bolted onto.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
100% correct. And officially, it's only available as an app image. But somebody created an extracted Arch native package on the AUR. It's called Cursor Extracted, and that's what is included in.
I wouldn't have even done that if I was maintaining the AUR package. I would just pull directly the app image and just throw that thing,
I don't like that
wherever on the file system. And
there is that
user
on the
bin
AUR.
and be done with it.
Yeah, there is that on the AUR. There's a guy who maintains a version that just installs the app image in the right place and calls it a day. But I selected the extracted version because for me it's a peace of mind kind of thing. But I use it, and I've been happy ever since, because it is the best part of Cursor AI is as you type the code, if you make a mistake while typing, it will mark it in red, right. So you know that you made a mistake live. You don't have to.
Kind of like most decent IDEs do. If you're entering something that will not run properly, it'll color it to let you know, hey, that's not real what you're typing right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I love Cursor, especially that you're limited on the amount of you have tokens, limited amount of requests, but I circumvented that by when you have a Google for Workspaces account, you can create unlimited aliases. So when you log into an account and you use up all your tokens, I can just create a new account with a new alias, and another account with a new alias, and another account with a new alias. So basically, I have unlimited amounts of tokens, and that's how I use it. It's amazing. It's useful, and I discovered it through Chris Titus Tech because that's what he uses, but he pays for it, like we all should. But it's amazing. It has made my life.
Well, I'll add better. It. I mean, like I said, I've got half a dozen other those AI chat assistants that I play with.
Yeah, well, this is to me, it's a code editor first, and an AI assistant last, because I only use assistant when I really need to. And it's embedded. I don't have to launch
Gemini is really good with suggestions as far as coding.
That's for coding. It's Sonnet.
Honestly, I'm gonna be honest here. Claude isn't the best. Like people keep talking about
I wouldn't use Claude for that.
How Claude is great. Honestly,
but Google's been.
I never liked it the most.
The Google AI has been fantastic with coding. You ask it anything.
Yeah,
you can get really specific on exactly what you want.
Gemini 2.0 Flash is actually really good. And it's really fast. Like holy fuck, is it fast?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Sonnet is on another level.
I just wanted to hop in on that conversation because, like,
Stefan,
there's one thing I noticed about using Copilot and other AI tools. It kind of feels like cycling with training wheels. Like you start to learn to feel like, I don't know, it's weird to describe. You start to feel like you can't do stuff without
without
LLM on
the
side.
help. Yes.
Yeah, and
Yep.
that kind of feels
you start
great.
relying on it, right?
Rarely.
Yep.
Yeah,
I could never use something like Cursor because honestly, it would get in my way. Because
same for me.
I used VS Code with the Copilot extension. I fucking hated it. To this day, I would rather open chat in a browser and chat with whether it be
I don't know. I like
Gemini.
I like having Olama in my Emacs though. It's
I hate
because
it.
I can copy the text directly into another text buffer or whatever.
Okay, if it doesn't look at, it doesn't touch my code while I'm editing.
Not
if I could
in
get
no,
into
no,
that.
I wouldn't want it to
Yes.
automatically start changing code for me. No,
I hate already. Just hate that when it like pops a suggestion in like lighter color into my. I go, why are you showing me this? I'm writing. Do not show me what I'm writing because I guys mad. But it is good for things when I'm like trying to like. Let's say I'm trying to do something that is fairly easy, mundane, like some sort of what is called, like some sort of boilerplate.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pawn that off to an AI and just copy paste it in.
Yeah.
Why would I write that boilerplate myself?
Yeah,
Like-
I'm fixing an issue with HTMX since 2 hours, and none of the AI models could help me resolve it.
Wait, what? Please repeat that again, please.
I'm trying to fix an issue with the HTMX rendering stuff in a table.
Did you actually say HTMX?
Yes, I said HTMX, yeah.
Oh, wow. You're the first person I know that ever actually interacted with such code in production.
No, I'm
Or like
not
at
using
least
it in
closer
production.
to
I'm using it.
No, this is his
for a game.
pastime. This is what he does for fun.
Yep, exactly. I'm not using
Okay,
it in
good.
production.
Okay, good.
I did before though.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
really?
All right, guys. Let's get a last word so we can keep this under the 2-hour mark, just in case it gets synced to Odyssey. These typically don't, though. Usually we run a little
From
long.
what I know, isn't sync service not available anymore?
No, they fixed it. So the DistroTube channel's back on Odyssey. So, Stefan, give us a last word.
Well, yeah. Do something and learn something, and don't rely too much on LLMs, because more than enough, or more than often enough, they may get in your way or introduce some stuff that you did not consider.
You know what? We're gonna dive deeper into that next time. I'm gonna make a note of that, and we're gonna get because I've got some thoughts on that. All right.
Yep. Have a good
Anything
one,
else?
though, and thanks for the chat.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Stefan. And Aliens, I don't know if he's mic'd up, wants to give us a last word. If you want, feel free to speak up. If he's not mic'd up, we'll move on to Big Pod and come back to him.
Well, check out No Tax Allowed podcast on YouTube and show.taxbase.com. In 2 weeks on Monday, that will be the 3rd, we're gonna have a special guest many of you might not want to miss. So check us out at Taxbase, show.taxbase.com, or on YouTube. No Tax Allowed. Also, we're available as No Tax Allowed on most of your favorite podcatchers, whether it be Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or whatever.
Very cool. All right, thanks, Big Pod. Steve, give us the last word, sir.
I just wanted to say the guest on No Tax Allowed is not me, so
thank God.
Otherwise I would take it over. But
wow, I assume when he said it was a can't miss kind of episode that he landed Richard Stallman.
Yeah. Okay.
We're having a very interesting individual.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say, learning is the best way to survive. So if you want to survive long enough on Linux, learning is the way to go.
All right.
Don't expect Linux to be to be as easy to use as you think. So you will need to do a little bit of learning. If you don't want to do any bit of learning, Linux is not so much for you. There are some distros that give you the impression that they might be easier to use than others. Yes, but with caveats, always. So keep that in mind if you want to switch to Linux.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for and thank you for the chat, of course, as always.
Yeah, these were fun discussions as usual, and of course, I want to thank you guys in the YouTube chat. You guys were great. I also want to thank the patrons that were here previously that dropped off. We had some guys that were here who already left, and I want to thank the patrons that couldn't be here. So I'm going to share some names on the screen here. And other than that, on our way out, name your favorite Star Trek series on our way out.
OSD.
Star Trek.
Deep
TOS.
Space Nine.
TOS.
Deep Space Nine's the only right answer, guys.